Welcome in to 11 Personnel presented by Monticello Bank. Nick Roush here, joined by Adam Luckett, where it's been a rough week for Kentucky football fans, but we still appreciate you tuning in to get the latest on the Cats. Luckett, I guess it's our job to bring our toolbox and fix this offense. I I I hope they're doing it, but the people have asked, so we're going to do our best. Here's the only issue, though. I'm not very good with tools. My wife does all the household chores around. When things break, she's the one that fixes it.
Same here. So it looks like we're on the same boat without a paddle there.
Hey, well, we'll figure it out, though. Just like we'll try our best to figure it out tonight after an ugly, awful, good-for-nothing performance against the South Carolina Gamecocks. You know how bad it was. It was really bad. I didn't realize how bad the pass protection was until I saw was it 15 pressures in 22 dropbacks? Yeah, 15 pressures and 22 dropbacks. I can't.
Yeah, I think Brock Vandergriff was 9 of 13, and I believe Gavin Wimsatt was 6 of 11. So yeah,
I can't remember a pressure rate ever being as bad as it was. Yeah, they had to quit calling offensive plays because things, not offensive plays, but they had to quit calling pass plays because things got so ugly. The pressure was there so quickly. And then when they actually did get plays off and they looked good, they were flagged for them. 3 plays in a row that gained total of 40 yards, all waved off by penalties. Look, it was as bad as it gets. And here's the thing. I appreciate the optimistic mindset of the team that we've heard since then. I mean, it's only week 2, right? Like, you have to be able to try to, like, you can't just throw in the towel for the season. There's a lot of football you still got to play, and they're talking about adjustments and we got to execute better, but they aren't really giving us much. They aren't really giving us much tangible to chew on of things specifically that will be different. So, what do we think they're actually doing? Do we believe them? Like, I don't know what's happening back there because they're not giving us a whole lot.
I mean, is that any different than the offseason?
No, it's about the same old, same old.
Listen here, like they've got 12 games here. We all know what the schedule is. It's daunting. There's no, it's very easy to just look at it and just be like, oh my gosh, what are they going to do? But I think we also need to remember, like, this roster's probably got 7 to 8 draft picks that'll get selected in April. Brad White, I think, is a good defensive coordinator. Bush Hamden, I think, is a good offensive coordinator, even though he's taking on the chin right now. I think they're going to figure it out in some regard. To me, Nick, the bigger question is just where are they? Big picture. Like, it's easy to get consumed by this offensive line.
Yeah.
And it's all they talked about all offseason, right? Improving, getting back to playing physical, dominating, yet our line is full of portal guys. Can you do that with portal guys? Kirby Smart talked about it today, I believe, on the teleconference.
He basically said no, there's not enough of them, and they're hard enough to find in the high school ranks. You have to develop them. It takes time.
So that gets you into the why would you hire Eric Wolford? That is why you hire him.
To recruit.
The Zach Yenzer tenure was not getting it done from a talent accumulation standpoint. So that's why Eric Wolford was brought in here. But you have this situation now where this is 3 years in a row. Now, I will say I think people forget how bad the 2022 offensive line was. There's been a lot of talk that this was the worst performance ever, but the 2022 line couldn't do anything. They couldn't pick up a blitz, and they couldn't run block either. At least this group to this point is showing us something in the run game.
Yeah,
so I don't think it's as bad as some people are saying, but just in that moment and in how pivotal that game was, it was very bad that it showed up right there. And then I think, again, Nick, it seems like we're getting Mark Stoops press conferences where he is befuddled by his team's performance
There's
after
a
games.
yeah, like I can't believe.
It's not happening all the time, but it's
Right.
happening more than it used to.
Yeah. Like we prepared differently than what we showed today.
Yeah. And so for me, my big question just with all of this is just where are they big picture? But it's not fair to make some grandiose statement without seeing these games play out, right? Like we have to see the games this year before
Yeah.
we get the. But the hard part is, as it was in the preseason when we talked about projecting this season, is just the ceiling's not very. The ceiling's probably a game lower than it would be normally, and I think the floor is probably a game lower than it would be normally since Stoops has kind of got this ramped up and they've been on their bowl streak. So right now it's looking like they could hit that floor, and it feels like the floor is probably 5-7, probably.
Mm-hmm.
Like what they played Saturday on the offensive line is just they're not that bad. Just they're not that bad. Though they will figure this out, and they will play some semblance of decent football, I would say. But they're not going to be this dominant group, and that gets back to the other topic. Like at Kentucky, can you expect to build a dominant offensive line, even if you're hitting on high school recruits? I think it's a fair question.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
I think it's fair to question that if you could consistently do that, even if you were hitting and where you're supposed to hit. And so that's where you are. You're kind of in a weird place offensively. Bush Hampton's even admitted this. They've had to throw out the plan, so they're having to adjust on the fly. Defensively, Nick, same stuff keeps happening, right? Stout against the run. They're getting after the passer, but they can't finish sacks for some reason. Or if they don't get home, someone's getting open eventually, and they're just getting beat in key critical situations, and I think that's very frustrating because that was the story of last year. That was the story of last year's South Carolina loss. That was the story of the Clemson loss, and then now it's the story of the South Carolina loss on that side of the football.
I've got a theory, Luckett. I don't know if he's willing to do it or not, but the issue is actually tackling the quarterback. So you actually have some bodies back there. Bo, you want to take some hits for us, buddy? Can we get a scout team guy? Surely there's some walk on that'll let Tyrese Fearbury tackle him, right? Like that's what they need. Need some just tackle the backups in practice. Can't be that bad. You're a football player. You're used to getting tackled. Just go get tackled.
Yeah,
5 reps. Here we go. I want to rattle off a stat for you, Mr. Adam Luckett. The average third down distance for Kentucky opponents is 10.39 yards. The success rate for Kentucky opponents on third and fourth down, 42.1%. They rank second in distance, 83rd in success rate in third and fourth down. So they're doing a great job until they actually have to do the job and finish it. Teams are in bad situations and they're still having success because you aren't scooping up fumbles, because you're having coverage busts. The raw numbers aren't that bad. It was like in the 60s, I think, over 2 games in third down defense that they're ranked nationally. Something like that.
Just the high leverage moments they lost in a big way in the South Carolina game on both sides of the football.
Yeah.
And that's why that's how you turn a close game into a blowout. You lose every meaningful snap in that football game. They lost every meaningful snap in that football game.
So here's my question. I guess we'll start with the offense. All you got to do is win some one-on-one battles like it. So are they capable of winning enough one-on-one battles? Matt, you mentioned that they aren't that bad, and I think you're right. I'm just worried that Bush had no clue they could be that bad, and so he was just shell shocked up in that booth.
Seemed that way, yeah.
Yeah. So how can play calling make that much of a difference? And the bigger issue is, can you still find ways to give Brock some layups to build up his confidence before you get back to the other stuff?
I think the best case scenario would just be Dylan Stewart as Myles Garrett, and we just didn't have an answer for him. There's not another Dylan Stewart on the schedule. You're going to face some good edge rushers, but there's not one as good as him. And he, to me, Nick, almost single-handedly kind of wrecked that game. And that's a true freshman. Kyle Kennard did some good things. Their defensive tackles did some good things. Without Stewart, they would have gave Kentucky a lot of problems. But Stewart was the engine behind that.
Right.
And without him on the roster, they lose to Old Dominion, South Carolina. Like, he is the dude driving that engine right now for their defense. That and I think in the back seven, I think you've seen some of their recruiting wins pay off. They're long, athletic, can run in that back seven, and they covered Kentucky up too. Even though Brock Vandagriff didn't have a ton of time. So from that aspect, you got to hope. Like, best case scenario is we're not playing Dylan Stewart again. So we don't have to worry about that.
Okay.
Like, the Georgia game, in a weird way, Nick, they don't have the bendy edge rushers. They're more built like Kentucky defensively.
Yeah.
Where they're going to give you issues is with simulated pressures, bringing guys off nickel blitzes, and being stout up front against the run. Where South Carolina has guys that are bendy and can run the hoop and shorten and get around there and get wins quick off the edge. And I think most teams Kentucky play are like that. There's not a ton of these bendy edge rushers that are first-round NFL guys that I think they're going to see this year. Trey Moore at Texas might be one, him and Anthony Hill, but we'll see. So from that aspect, I think they're going to be better built to handle some of that. But you do have to wonder, just with what we saw from Eric Wolford's offensive line last year, pass protection was an issue. And so how do they go about fixing that for a young quarterback who saw ghosts on Saturday? And that's on Bush Hamden. I think you're probably going to see a team get more run heavy and then figure out how do they get the receivers involved in this offense, because you have 7, 6, and 9 have to touch the football.
Yeah.
I believe they had 3 or 4 touches, that 5 maybe touches in that ball game. That's just not enough.
Nope.
Those guys have to get the football. So the jet sweep stuff did not work against South Carolina. So if you're not good enough to execute that, how do you kind of get them the ball? Nick, the perimeter blocking's been disappointing in some of the quick game stuff. Like, they're just getting whooped on the outside. So if you can't block on the perimeter, like, that's not an offensive line thing, right?
Yeah,
that's
right.
someone else blocking. And so how do you get them?
Even the tight ends, you can even say it about them. Not
how
just
do you get,
the wide receivers.
How do you get them the football, involved in the offense, and how do you, I think, kind of protect Vandagriff by in a run-heavy, easy pass game? I think, and I wrote about this at KSR Plus, there's some similarities with Alabama's offense. I'm not going player for player. I'm just talking stylistically and what they want to do. New offensive coordinator, Eric Wolford's the offensive line coach. They could not protect, but they had a new quarterback who's a former blue chip recruit, but they could run the ball efficiently, but they didn't necessarily have the most explosive tailbacks. So what they ended up building was a run-heavy offense that stayed ahead of the chains in the run game. They had a quarterback who could do some stuff with his legs, but the best thing he did was throw vertically. And how they beat you was run the ball with efficiency and throwing over the top. If you watched West Virginia at all last year, they did the same thing with Garrett Green. Garrett Green's completion percentage was 50-something yards, but he averaged like north of 9 yards per attempt because most of his completions were just deep balls. Through 2 games and through limited sample size last year, like Brock Vandagriff on 20-plus yard throws, I believe he's 5 of 8. He's completed 5 of 8 passes, and these are low. These are not high percentage throws. So if he's good at that, I would say lean into that. And how you can do that is you can max protect and play action, and you can do some of the things to kind of help create that. To me, that's the 2 things they do well right now. So they got to kind of lean into those strengths. And the craziest thing is, the biggest worry was could they run the ball efficiently for us coming into the season, and they've done that without the number 1 running back. And I think doing that against
Mhm.
South Carolina was a pretty good sign. I think that's a sign that they're probably going to be able to do that at some decent level throughout the year.
Got some bad news about running back injuries too. Chip Trainum is out, and Jason Patterson has joined the official injury report. He is doubtful along with Jagger Burton. So that could be significant if you have two of your top three running backs out. You're down to only two players. Not ideal.
And it looks like two starters here too, Nick. Gerald Mincy and Maxwell have three starters. Hairston, Silver, Mincy are all probable, so that is a good sign. But from this report, I wouldn't expect to see Patterson or Burton on Saturday.
Man, that not ideal. Not ideal. To from the Georgia side, Michael Williams is their big one. He is their talented defensive end. Probably the bendiest guy they got, but like you said, he isn't. That's not his primarily in his bag, if you will. So yeah, that could be significant. But geez, Patterson had a good game, and you were kind of hoping you could have him to run the ball. DSK gets dinged up, and then you're stuck with a Wilcox. No offense to Wilcox, but that could be tough sledding. That could be very, very tough sledding.
Yeah, I think with Patterson, you saw some good things with him. So that is that's very disappointing there for sure.
All right. I hated to derail things. Do you want me to go ahead and add that to the website, Mr. Luckett?
Yeah, I see you're in there. You see, we're welcoming our listeners into a little work chat here. But Nick, Warren Brinson is also a starter on the defensive line. He's questionable. It sounds like he's going to give it a go at practice, so decent chance he plays on Saturday. But with Michael Williams being doubtful, I wouldn't expect him to play. Devin Smith is another guy, freshman linebacker, is out still. Not really sure what's going on with him. Cortland Ford, again, shows up. But I will note that Mincy being available is notable. So is Silver, because Silver missed the last few series of that football game on Saturday. And again, we don't specifically know the injuries here, but we do get the statuses. So as of right now, it looks like Kentucky's going to have about 8 scholarship players out. Chip Trainum, Hardly Gilmore, Devin Smith, Darian Henry-Young, Cortland Ford, Tavian Gatson, Josiah Hayes, Jason Patterson, Jagger Burton. That's 9 players. I would suspect that we see Dylan Ray getting the start there at left guard for Jagger Burton after he got injured there on that extra point there in the second quarter and didn't return to the football game. So Dylan Ray will be plugged in there. And then it sounds like a couple of freshmen are pushing for playing time, potentially. Abasim, true freshman. It was a nice recruiting win for Kentucky. He's going to be a guy that's probably going to end up being a multi-year starter here. He's, again, like we mentioned, these are the guys you got to hit on. Your high school recruits and get them in there and have them start for you multiple years. He's a guy that's looking like they're going to be in a starting spot. And then Malachi Wood is a guy they're potentially looking to get in there. My only worry about playing these young linemen, Nick, is you put them out there too early.
Yeah, you don't want a David Wallaball situation because that kid playing decent ball for Syracuse, but he kind of got wrecked at Kentucky.
Well, I also think it's a conversation to have around Jagger Burton.
Yeah.
Did you play him too early?
Exactly. Right. There's no doubt about it.
So that's always something you have to be careful of. Like for me, what good is going to be playing Selm and Wood this year?
Cost benefit analysis sort of deal. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the thing. Let's revisit this in the spring to me. Maybe get them some 2s reps. So maybe that's how you handle it. But yeah, so that you always got to be careful with that, I think. But again, Kentucky, that's a pretty long injury list that they have.
Man, 7 just outright out. Not ideal. Not ideal.
Yeah, most of that was preseason. 2 camp injuries with Trainum and Gilmore, and then Smith, I guess, was a recent injury, but everything else was I think spring or last season, and I'm not sure what it really is going on with Cortland Ford.
Yeah, that one we just have no idea. He's just been injured for a while, most of
Yeah,
his career.
missed all camp, and then I haven't. He's probably in the weight room doing stuff, but I haven't, like, when we get in these practices and they're leaving the field, Nick, I haven't seen him. So now that's not a Cal thing, but I'm sure he's in there somewhere. But
I injured my back when I was in high school, and it was funny. There was actually another guy, same exact injury, kind of a weird freak thing, and we could lift, but we couldn't play. We could just do upper body stuff, and one of my buddies, when the running backs coach would come in for practice and he'd see us working out and he'd give him a look and he'd just be like, I swear to God, he thinks I'm a little, I'd be out there if I could play. This is bull. And he would get so fired up. It was, but that was the worst kind of injury because you didn't have like a cast or anything to show for it. So,
yeah,
you did just look like a sissy.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Oh man, these injury reports. One thing I'll say about them, the daily updates are a lot. It feels like a bit much sometimes, but I guess it's better than the alternative, which is nothing.
So. Which is, don't get anything. Snoops gets irritated when you ask about it on Thursday.
Yep.
And then us having to count the jerseys in the pregame warm-ups.
Yes. So it could
I would much rather have information overload, and I think the fans appreciate it too. And if you're trying to dabble with some pocket change with minus or plus signs, it's information well used to.
Oh man! All right. Well, I'm almost finished publishing this, Mr. Luckett, but I will say.
So where are you at, Nick? Just with the offense, big picture.
Big picture.
Maybe the program at large.
Big picture. I'm just kind of pissed off that they didn't see. Like, you should have known that the offensive line. Like, when I'm asking you repeatedly, are you concerned about it? You should have been more concerned about it. You just should have. Like, that the ceiling for these portal players isn't the highest. I mean, the guys are on their second, third teams for a reason, right? Like, you may like a little bit what they have, but there's potential there. So I'm just a little pissed off that it was that they tried to quell concerns on the offensive line when they've been bad. It's not been good. This is a long rebuild because of those misses in 2022.
Yeah, but, I mean, I think Wolford is taking a beating, obviously, online, but he wasn't hired to be a magic man in year one from a tactician standpoint. He was hired to bring players in, and to fix the problem for the future. And so I think you really have to look at that why Snoops made that. You have to look at it through that prism. And in the meantime, you're just going to have to live through maybe some up and down moments. But again, you even with this line, Nick, their depth's improved. You know the situation, but the two starters are injured right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Jagger Burton's not going to play Saturday, most likely, and Gerald Mincy has been in and out of the lineup through 2 games. So, that's something you really couldn't. You probably could absorb it okay, but that's something you didn't really want, especially early in the year when you're trying to build confidence and gel that unit. And so it's just an unfortunate situation.
The thing for me, I understand, like, this. Basically, I feel like a lot of the stuff that Wolford's getting now, he just didn't get enough of back then because nobody had to really answer for it.
They did a good job of threading the needle on that hire in the offseason.
And here's the rub of it. Like, the reason why they're behind the 8 ball is because Wolford, that's why Stoops brought Wolford in to recruit the bodies. He had a great first class. All of them medically retired early. Well, it doesn't hurt as bad if he has 2 more classes after that and he's going into year 4, right? So you're years behind on your rebuild. So that's the part of this where it could be like I get it now. Like I felt like at the time we were focused on basketball, and then you just did the BB and tonight thing, and you moved on, and people were mad for a couple of days. Now we're getting the delayed sort of reaction.
Yeah, I mean, I think like that is where most of the criticism or blame is going. I think for fans is to that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But I also think it's more. It's obvious. It's honestly a more big picture issue with the program, right? You know, you can't. They've missed so much in high school recruiting. Some of it, not with bad luck, just rotten luck. You know, and some of it was Wolford left them in a little high and dry situation there after 2021 too. So he's back now trying to kind of help fix those issues, but it's going to take time to do that. And Nick, guess what's going to happen in the offseason? They're going to portal 2 or 3 starters on the line.
And it's probably not going to work.
And we're just going to be like, it's going to be the same conversation. It's going to be like, they'll be okay. You just want them to be okay on the offensive line. And if they can do that, then how they can operate. But a big issue I have, and I've stated this, it seems like from the messaging we get, they want this to be an offensive line program. Mark Stoops even talked about this on a coach's show on Monday. Like the big blue wall, right? And like dominant, physically dominant, impose our will at the line of scrimmage with the offensive line. I don't know how that goal is even achievable for at least 3 more years.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So what do you have to do to move the football and score points and win games until that is even on the table potentially? And that's a big, you're putting a big kind of asterisk there because things are going to have to bounce right for you. And we've talked about how that could be difficult. So from an operations standpoint, like you just have to figure it out when you're not great on the offensive line. When you have units like this one, and when you have units like the one you're going to have next year, where you've got a couple transfers and you've kind of got maybe a guard playing tackle, or maybe a guard playing that shouldn't be playing yet, or maybe a guy you may have to play left who's played right most of his career, a guy who's played in the MAC you're taking a roll of the dice on. So you have to figure that out on offense. And then I did think it was notable that Stoops mentioned the churn, just coordinator, taking its toll, to use his words. And I think we're seeing some of that play out, and then it's frustrating to watch play out in real time.
For me, the part that's frustrating, Luckett, is that like the scheming around it. You didn't know you had to do that against Dylan Stewart in South Carolina, right? Like that was the one thing they had that you knew that was really good, and you weren't ready for it. I mean, you probably weren't ready for it to that degree, but the only adjustment that I felt like made at all was just let's hand it off to Patterson and DSK 11 straight times, and that'll get them off her back some. They're just
I do think, again, I think the jet sweep series was I think that was kind of the identity of the offense when I kind of watched. Move defenses horizontally,
and then
get them flowing, attack them vertically.
Yeah.
Use Barry and Brown as kind of a gadget player, and use Jamori Macklin because he's got some speed. And then also use Fred Ferrier and Anthony Brown-Stevens in kind of this role. And maybe even Demi Sumo-Karngbe in some packages. Do that, and that's how we're going to attack, and that's how we're going to get the ball out on the perimeter quickly. But it got blown up in week 2, and it was just okay, I thought, week 1 against Southern Miss.
Yeah.
So if that was a
world beater, right?
If that was a big dang of the offense, it could have just been like, oh crap. Because even Hamden mentioned on the TFL that Stoops was mad about on the 2nd and 1. It was a read, check with me in the box. They said to Brock to give it. He did the right.
Mm-hmm.
I think Stoops said it was misread, but Hamden said it was just a give. It wasn't really a true read. And so he gave it at TFL. And it's just, if that's like the basis of your offense and that gets blown up, I could see why they were in panic mode. And then, Nick, you don't want to be too critical on Brock Vandagriff. It's his first SEC start, first
Yes.
start against a real defense.
Mm-hmm.
But it was concerning how he kind of showed up in that game, how he was bailing from the pocket, how he was moving into the rush, how he's not sticking in there a little bit longer. You do not want to be too critical because of because it was his first start, but you would have liked to see more from him. And if that happens again, you need him to, I think, stick in that pocket a little more, be a little more firm in the pocket, and be able to kind of stare down and look for receivers. But then again, there's clips out there our friend Van Howes put up where there was a double A-gap pressure. They brought 6 or 7. You're hot, and no one's running what I would say is a hot route.
Yeah.
Like, there's nowhere to even go with the football.
And is that a communication issue, or is that just you got to be smarter as a wide receiver?
Is that like a side adjust? Like, oh, they're bringing a nickel pressure, I got to replace the nickel or whoever. Or safety's coming down, I got to replace the safety.
The offense is a big mess, and the thing is though, Luckett, is a lot of the stuff comes back to just being clean, playing quality football, not being flagged. And they didn't do that in the first week. So they're up, they're down.
That's weird. It's so weird.
They're so unpredictable right now. It's going to make it a wild ride for Kentucky fans. And you know what? You should be there for it. Just go download the Game Time app or visit them online at gametime.co. Find the best. It's the best place on the internet for last-minute tickets wherever you need to go. I know Keeneland tickets, those were a hot commodity. That opens up in a couple weeks. You can get tickets there. They've got a new feature, too, where you toggle the switch for the PT picks, and it's beautiful. All-inclusive pricing for everything you need. You don't have to worry about a bunch of different add-ons. Just go to Game Time, check out your seats, and you can see your vantage point, your viewing point of your seats from the app. It's simple. They get delivered right to your phone. Not a hassle whatsoever. All-inclusive pricing. And they've also got zone deals, too. So I'm going to unlock a zone deal, and bada boom, bada bam, $49 to get in to go watch the number 1 team in the country play football. And when you use the promo code KSR, you're going to get $20 off your first purchase. So download the Game Time app, redeem code KSR for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. That's Game Time, the best place for tickets to all of your college football games, your concerts, your comedy shows, wherever it may be. Game Time. It's the fastest growing ticket app in the country for a reason. Check them out today. The one thing is, at least defensively, you think Kentucky has something there, but I mean, against the run, what do I see here? Against the run, the Kentucky offense is 3rd in EPA nationally. Pretty good. Pretty good. But the pass defense, Luckett.
Defensively, through 6 quarters or whatever, they look like a top 25 defense. The one big weakness is the pass defense. They're not forcing incompletions still. Right, they're having
71% completion percentage is 130th nationally.
They're having bust in coverage, and that's concerning when you look at some quarterbacks on the schedule. And so that has to get fixed. But if they can fix that, which is not a guarantee because that was something they struggled with last year. But if they can fix that, they're going to be pretty daggone good on defense. I don't leave the South Carolina game super concerned defensively, other than they're getting free runners and just not even affecting the quarterback. It's just a step away, and it's like, well, that defense almost defeats the purpose of a free runner. But they also had 3 sack fumbles in the game too. So they're good. There's a lot of good too, I think. And I think they're going to be stout against the run all year. It's just, can they shore up that pass defense? Again, in the third
Yeah.
quarter, Nick, there were some moments where they could have the defense had chances to totally flip that game.
And I thought they
You know,
were. It felt like one of those games where the offense did just enough to hang in there, get it within 4 before half, and you're like, all right, defense, you got to go win the game, but you can make a big play here. You can turn into
yeah,
a slobber knocker. You can do what South Carolina did to you a year ago, right? And just
yeah, you
force mistakes that
right.
let you hang around until that big play happens and you go win the game.
Yeah, you get the turnover and you get a score. Then what does South Carolina look down on the road
Mm-hmm.
with their quarterback making his first SEC road start, with the crowd really into it? So that was, they had their chances. It was unfortunate that they didn't fully take advantage. But overall, big picture, I think they're going to be fine. But they just got to figure out some of this pass coverage stuff. The safety play, Nick, you kind of want more from that group.
You put a pin in that. That's my big picture thing that you might want to address for later. I did want to address this in the chat, though, from Matty G. He said, for offense was unpredictable as Nick's ads reads, we'd have a lethal attack. You never know when those are going to come. Just left hook, right hook, pow, pow. We know the defense is pretty good, though, but is it good enough to mess with Carson Beck? Right? Like, what? That guy really, he kind of ruined your season last year defensively, because he showed other teams the tape on what to do. And I worry that could be the case again if Kentucky isn't taking him to the ground regularly. Part of the reason why I'm not as skittish as most is because I think Kirby is going to be stubborn and bullheaded and say he's going to do like the practice. He's going to have practice and say, we're going to run the ball against this team because if we can run the ball against them, we can run against everybody. So I think there's going to be a focus on them to be able to run the football because they probably know that they can just turn Beck loose whenever they want. They can light him up.
Yeah, Georgia's interesting because running back, they're trying to figure out. Like Trevor Etienne and a true freshman have kind of emerged as their top guys, but Etienne has only played one game. True freshman's Nate Frazier from Southern California. It's popped in the first couple of games. So they're trying to figure out at running back. Offensive line, I think it's one of the best offensive lines in college football, Nick. And then they got Beck, who I think probably the best quarterback, or I would argue he's the best quarterback in college football. Then at receiver, they don't necessarily, I don't think, have first round or top 50 picks, but they're pretty well rounded. Dominic Lovett's a good player. Dylan Bell's an interesting kind of versatile player who can play running back, slot receiver. They got two good tight ends in Oscar Delp and Ben Urasek. Neither are Brock Bowers, but they're good tight ends. Mm-hmm. And then they added Colby Young. Arian Smith's kind of a deep vertical threat. London Humphreys has got some speed, the Vanderbilt transfer. Yeah. So they've got weapons, and Bobo's a good play caller. So, I mean, he absolutely dialed you up last year, absolutely filleted Kentucky's defense. So can you find a way to kind of solve that puzzle? And it's a hard puzzle to solve because it's an offense that's always been, like I talk about success rate all the time. Georgia's always in the top 5 in success rate. They are the kings of staying ahead of the chains. And then Beck is kind of, with the passing game, I think he's made them more explosive for how good he is as a passer.
Yeah.
And so they're going to be really hard to stop, I think, most of the season. They honestly probably should pass it more because last year they were top 10 in every meaningful passing metric, EPA per play, yards per attempt, success rate. I mean, they probably should have passed it more. And so we'll see. I will say, Nick, you probably haven't watched it yet, but Brad White was on edge in that press conference.
Oh.
That was a Brad White I haven't really, from a tone standard, I haven't really heard before.
Well, pissed off.
Seemed like it to me. Now, that's just my point of view, but he seemed like he had some you-know-what to him at the press conference. So I'm interested to see, does that show up at all with his unit on Saturday?
And
what difference does it make? Does it make much of a difference? Because we all know what this game is. If Georgia plays their A game, Kentucky is getting housed. But to me, the game is not even much about Kentucky's defense at all. It's really about the offense. here the next 2 weeks to me. It's about the offense. Can you figure out a winning strategy on offense?
And
can you operate cleanly on offense?
I'm so worried about that. So worried.
Georgia hasn't given up a touchdown, I think, in 3 games. I don't believe Florida State scored again. I don't think Georgia Tech's the last team to score a touchdown on them.
And then
or Bama, excuse me, Bama.
Right. I'm just worried about Brock, man. I don't want to lose him, and I don't think the familiarity it matters at all.
I think it's going to help him more than a normal quarterback in this same situation.
I guess so, but at the same time, like it's.
Yeah, but there's an intimidation factor you have to take into account when you play someone like Georgia.
True, fair enough.
He shouldn't.
Fair enough.
Like, he is buddies with Malachi Starks. Like,
right.
I don't think he's like, if Malachi Starks is running at him, I think he's going to want to run him over. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a friend element to all of this. Like, we talk to these guys at media days. He is dudes like with this. He was roommates with Chaz Chambliss, the starting outside linebacker. There's not going to be an intimidation factor with him like I think some other quarterbacks have in this matchup a lot of the times. So does that allow him to play loose?
You say that, but he looked pretty intimidated on Saturday. So I just think that's everybody.
Different. I think it's different.
I know, but
that could just be me.
I think I think everybody is just has like this question, like what if Brock isn't the guy? Like what if somehow Devin Leary wasn't the worst? Right? Like there's like because like at least Leary, he threw some touchdown passes, but
sack avoidance was a big thing for Leary. I think we remember you look up the raw sacks and you're like, oh, they only gave up so many sacks. Like Leary, it was like one or two a game, I would say, where he was able to shake off when he was dead to rights.
And my bigger thing is, at least in Leary's case, he had played a lot before. So, like, you knew that at least he had seen himself do it on tape. Whereas Brock, getting back what he's never had at the college level, right? Like, we've never seen it before. So, I mean, that's just the big picture concern I have, in that if Malachi Starks is jumping routes, across the middle, right, where it should be open, but he's got the instincts and he plants his foot and he drives and he jumps a route where he's not supposed to be there, but he's just there. That I'm just worried.
Yeah, well, true drop back progression passing, we've seen enough to be really worried about what they integrate. Like his big mistakes, that's where they come. It's just traditional drop back, reading the defense,
slanted Dane.
That's where his issues come. Where he's good is, I think, in the play action, the RPO game, and throwing on the move. One of the more concerning parts of the game was they had probably Dane Key open on a corner out, on a sprint out, on third down, and they gave up a pressure on a sprint out, which should never happen. The reason you run a sprint out is to get an easy throw. Like, that should never happen. Jalen Farmer just whiffed, and he had to throw it away because they got pressured. Like, that should never happen on a sprint out. And that happened Saturday. So that's not his fault. So
Right. Well, and that goes back to that never should happen, and it happened. So how can you trust anybody around you? Might take some time, and I worry that clock will keep getting turned back if Georgia is just busy being Georgia, playing a murder ball. So I sound pessimistic. Okay, I bet I'm at plus 24.5 today because I'm a sicko. I'm just a pervert for misery. But like the spot, they are an old team. They're going to be pissed off. They've played Kirby well in the past. The teams are built similarly. Like, as bad as it is, like, I actually do think they're going to have a pretty decent showing on Saturday. And that's where, like, we have this headline for goals. So what tangible things can people grasp onto that they can feel good about despite the almost inevitable loss? Because I don't even think covering will make people happy because that number's so big, right? Like, I don't if it's 2 scores, yes, they'll be fine with it, unless it's like we had the lead and you blow it in the fourth quarter and it's just a catastrophe. But if it's within 2 scores, I think folks would be have some reasons to be optimistic because they would probably see a confident Brock Vandagriff at some point, and they would probably see the defense that we kind of expected in the preseason.
Before I get to this on Vandagriff, I want people to realize there's a long leash here. Kentucky is very invested in him working here.
He's got 2 years.
They got him because he could start for 2 years, and he's got a toolbox that they don't really attract much. Gavin Wimsatt, I don't think, is a quarterback they want to turn to full time. He is a nice change of pace player, and he's going to have a decent, big role in this offense, but they don't want to turn to him. Cutter Boley is not ready. They do not need to be throwing him out there now. And I would argue he probably needs next year to sit. He can be I think perfect scenario, he would be the backup next year and get reps in games, and then potentially turn it over to him or a portal guy, and maybe have him beat out a portal guy going into year 3. But they are very much invested in Vandagriff working. So if they have to pull him, it's really, really bad. And so that's why this next couple weeks is building confidence. So for me, Nick, it's finding one, clean operation on offense. Can you run an offense and not just have negative plays pile up? Can you give Brock Vandagriff some easy completions early? To me, look clean, look like a competent offense. And you didn't look like that last week. So that's goal number 1. No. To me, there's no moral victories in this game. There's nothing they can do, really, unless this is a one-possession game with 4 minutes left to play or something. There's nothing they can really do to, I think, really rebuild this fan base's confidence. Because this season really is, we all know what the season is kind of now. You're going to get swings at Georgia, Ole Miss, and Texas, but the season comes down to 4 games. It comes down to Vanderbilt, Florida, Auburn, Louisville, and then don't lose the Murray State or Ohio. It's a 4-game season in a lot of ways, and that's a month away. So right now it's about figuring out what you have to do to play winning football. And for me, I think offensively it's just finding a way to play confident. Does Brock look like he's gets in a rhythm or looks like a confident quarterback? Is he making plays, football plays, and he's being a football player? Where last week he just looked shell-shocked. You don't want to see that.
Yeah.
So for me, it's that. And then I want to see, and then also a level of hair on fire. You hear all the time how hard Kentucky hits, how physical, Kirby Smart, how physical they are. I want to see that. I want to see Brock Bowers catch the ball on 3rd and 4 and Carrington Valentine knocking backwards into the Georgia sideline to create a 4th and 1, right? That's what you want to see in this game, a level of physicality and a level of fight from Kentucky. And then offensively, can you just put together a cleaner operation? And do you look more competent? Can you get the ball to your playmakers in space some? And I think that's really the goal for not only this week, but moving forward and start the process of building what can be an offense that can move the chains and score points.
And that's where it's hard to define, hey, Brock, I need you to complete 70% of your passes. That seems like a stretch. But I'd like for easy plays to be easy plays. And I'd like to have a moment where one of these guys wiggles free and makes a big play too. Because the efficiency in this offense has been in the run, I forget what the success rate is in the run game off the top of my head, but
they're number 26 nationally.
Yeah,
I think
50%, and that's pretty damn good. So you have to complement that with some explosive plays. So I'd like to see that Dane Key catch was awesome. Let's get a couple more of those, right? A couple more explosive plays down the field. You mentioned that vertical passing from Brock earlier. Just can those guys give him enough time to rip off one of those play actions? So,
and I don't. If I was, assuming Brock Vandagriff's 100% healthy, I'd almost run him on the first play.
Get it over with. Yeah,
you're going to run it, and I want you to lower your shoulder into one of your teammates right here, to get you all right, we're playing football, and to just relax and then go then go play quarterback. But I would almost do that on the first play because maybe that's something where he just needs to settle in the game. Maybe we're
That's
still
how,
learning about him.
Levis was. Levis
Yeah,
loved getting taken away.
we're still learning about him, and I do say, man, it typically takes 4 games, for me, to get a good feel of a team.
We don't have 2 games. We've got 1.5.
And
and they were 2 totally different things.
I think one of my bigger lessons from this year, especially I think in kind of the portal era, Nick, that playing 3 SEC games or 3 conference games for I think anyone in your first 5, it's a tough draw out the gates. Like I wonder, like they probably needed a FCS team week 2, like to prevent what we saw happen for South Carolina, because it's clear that they weren't ready for a game of that caliber at that point in the schedule, which is weird. But I think they could have benefited from an additional kind of preseason game, for lack of a better term. But now they got all these questions and they don't have time to, they've got Georgia and then Ohio, and then you jump right back into it with a road trip to Ole Miss, and so it's tough. But then I say that, but that another worry sign was that's where Stoops' teams have been really good, is week 2 SEC games, first SEC game, and that's the result they got. That's concerning because that's typically been a strength for them throughout this run under Stoops.
And it might get ugly on Saturday. It might get ugly. It may very well could be, because that's what Georgia does to teams. They've won 41 straight regular season games, and they're once again loaded. And it isn't just that, like, the crazy thing is they still have all SEC talent potentially up front. Nazir, it's not it's Stackhouse, right? I want to call him Steakhouse.
Yes.
I know Williams might not be playing, but like they still have dudes. They're just not like top 10 pick dudes.
I mean,
it's like here's really good ball players. They're just not like your top 10 guys, just the safety instead.
We'll see how good App State ends up being, but that's they play good level of football.
Yeah.
Clemson scored 35 points in the first quarter. I think they ended up scoring 66 in that football game, and Georgia absolutely put them in a straitjacket.
Yeah.
In the season opener.
Yeah. So, yeah, it could get ugly. It could get very, very bad on Saturday night, and I might look like an idiot. And but this team, it's the thing right now. Kentucky's unpredictable. So you know what? Why not expect anything? The Cats, they haven't beat a number 1 team in 17 years. I guess that's the math. That's the correct math. Yeah. They've only done it 3 times in program history, 50s, 60s, and then a long, long drought until they could do it again. So, it's been close before. We might have a little bit of rain in the forecast Sunday night. I don't know what it's going to be. I looked
today, and it's not looking – it's maybe too early to tell, but it's not looking terrible. It looked like maybe off and on, overcast. It's actually, if the rain holds off, it's going to be a beautiful night.
I think high school football is in a little bit more trouble.
That's what it looked like. It looked like Friday would be the heavy stuff.
Yeah. Which game of the week? LCA versus LexCath, right? Or no, LCA versus Cal. Sorry. So the Fighting Max Duffys versus the Louisville, correct? I'm pretty sure it's Cal versus LCA. I'm going to be so mad if it's not that and it's the Holy War, because the Holy War is a great name for a rivalry. Shout out Utah BYU. Great high school rivalry as well.
We also, our show Saturday, tailgate show.
Yeah.
Gate 1.
At the Cats Corner, which is by Gate 1. So when you see the entrance to Nutter Fieldhouse, just walk up the hill a little bit. That's back where the parents tailgate. So you'll see us. We'll be there after the catwalk, approximately 5:30. And we'll have some little passes to hand out too for 50% off memberships for KSR Plus, and information about our friends at Revel XP. So should be fun. Could be a fun Saturday. I kind of like people. The haters are hating on the slate Luckett, but I'm so fired up for tomorrow's Pigskin preview too. Like I love this slate. I don't know how much I love the card, but I think I'm going to play a lot. And I'm fascinated by Texas State, Arizona State, because somehow I've watched multiple Arizona State games, so far. And Texas State, who had this awesome offense, now all of a sudden has one of the best defenses in G5. So like that's a fascinating game to me. That should be, as much as people are gonna be walked into Dolphins Niners. That game's gonna be fun.
Got a fun Friday slate too.
Oh yeah, with K State, who I think I got at -7. I think I already locked that one in.
Yeah,
So we'll
K-State,
tease it for
Arizona.
you.
Yeah. I think this is kind of the last week, Nick, where you got a lot of those FBS G5 games. You really get a lot of conference games starting week 4.
Yeah.
And then that's when it gets really fun. But I think it's good. I think there's some good noon and 3:30 action. So there's enough there, I think, where we're going to have a good college football Saturday.
Oh, it's going to be a great time. We're fired up, and you'll be fired up every time you walk into a Monticello bank, because Monticello Bank, they hook you up there. It's where people matter. It's been their motto for 138,000 years. I'm exaggerating. 128. Oh yeah, they've been in business forever because they're putting people first. They got customer-focused financial services, which put the numbers on your side every single time that you have a banking need, whether it's just personal savings or you're trying to make a big purchase. They'll take care of you at Monticello Bank. You can visit them online at nbcbank.com or at one of their 21 branches in 14 different markets across the Commonwealth. Monticello Bank, where people matter. Member FDIC, equal housing lender. Luckett, did you ever find out about your car? Are you going to have to go to Monticello Bank to get a car loan?
It's looking like we're going to be okay.
Woo! There we go. That's exciting.
I haven't heard from the insurance company yet to get the official we're good, but it's looking like we're going to be okay. So I don't want to get the old cart in front of the horse here, but I think we're going to be okay. But I will be in this rental for a little bit longer.
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's been rough. This was not the start to the season that any of us anticipated. It's been rough. But you're having fun with it. There's a lot of football left to go, and when in doubt, there's more football to watch. So
it's for Kentucky. They're entering an interesting time here, specifically these next 2 weeks, because they got hit with they had to eat a you-know-what sandwich.
Yep.
Right? And so how do you bounce back from that? You bounce back, you're playing the best team in college football, and then you're playing a MAC team you should beat. So it's kind of a weird, but I actually think that's probably best. I don't know if for their season, I don't know if I would want them to jump back in and play a really important game after what happened against South Carolina. Like, I almost feel like they need some time to reset and figure out how they're going to operate. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so what can you get together before you go to Ole Miss, a team you've played tough, but it's going to be hard because they're scoring a boatload of points, but also you're going to be their first real challenge because they haven't played anybody. And then you get a bye before that huge stretch starts. So it's an interesting, really kind of 4 weeks or a month for me for the program. And then then judgment time, I think, kind of arrives after that, where they're going to play a bunch of games really important right in a row. And how do they get through that stretch? So it's kind of, we've entered an interesting part of the schedule, and they need to show some resolve, man. After that performance.
And personally, it just sucks because the reality of it too is it is all about them. But that means that what are we going to get to chew on from them? What are they going to say that's riveting? I mean, we went from having game day coming to town and all the hoopla that comes with that, to just tighten up, button up. We got to go to work and blah, 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 blah.
I mean, it was a huge missed moment for the program. I mean, that was a huge missed opportunity for them. They had a guy in town that it's head to head with South Carolina, Mikael Skinner. Now that doesn't mean much typically, but it's just
right. It's still not a good look.
The optics of hosting that kid for dinner, I could not imagine after the game.
It's going to be miserable.
And you've lost. There's some trends. You lost 3 in a row to South Carolina. You've lost 2 of 4 to Missouri. 2 of 4, 2 or 3 to Missouri. You've lost recent one to Vanderbilt. There's some. The home record, I don't want to just hammer it every week, but it's starting to really become a thing, you know? And it's probably going to get 2-9 in your last 11 here Saturday in SEC games. And so they've got to flip the script. And can they do it? I think Brock Vandergrift's going to have a lot to say in that. They really need to play better around him, but they also need him to get rolling and to become a player for them, playmaker for them. And I think a lot of the season rides on that. And so, number one, it's just getting him a level of confidence, I think, after what we saw on Saturday. And then defensively, if you get into that game again, you can't make those mistakes, those key critical mistakes that they made in the third quarter. And so it's not going to be a boring season, Nick. It might be a little slog here for a couple weeks, but some of these games in October, SEC games that are big games but maybe don't have a ton at stake, it's going to feel like these games have a lot at stake. It's going to be very similar to me the 2016 season, where they played all these games, but they all felt like really, really important in a vacuum, for one reason or the other. Like that South Carolina game at home was huge, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Mississippi State game at home was huge because you thought Stoops' job might have been in limbo. His job's not in limbo now.
Right.
But unless he wanted to step away. But it does feel like the chance to save this year and to save what has been the arrow pointing down is kind of going to rely on those games. Those games are going to feel really, really important. And so there's an interesting couple weeks, I think, coming down the chimney, but you have to get there first. And so it's just going to be a weird, unique season.
It's only week 3. It's only week 3. We're going to be here for the long ride, though, and every Wednesday night. So come join us. It'll be a lot of fun. I promise you, come join us Saturday, 5:30 at the Cat's Corner after the catwalk concludes. Talk some ball, hang out, chop it up a little bit. Should be a good time. Luckett, safe travels back to the old homestead, and let's win some bets this weekend. Let's share some winners tomorrow, and let's win some bets.
Yeah, come out and see us in the Kroger Field parking lot. Come to KS Bar before the game. Even if it's raining, KS Bar is a good place to be if you're heading to the game.
Heck yeah. It's been good chatting with you, Mr. Adam Luckett. I'm Nick Roush. This has been 11 Personnel.